the SOGI materials and how they're being implemented, led Glenn Hansman, again, president of the BC Teachers Federation, to say the following when a couple of Christian parents came up to and said that they wanted to be able to opt their kids out of classes that had SOGI materials in it. Well, Glenn Hansman basically laughed at them. And this is what he said. There are people from different faiths, different nationalities, different combinations of families, and also gay, lesbian, and transgender characters in books or people in their school and community. So I'm not really sure what they're suggesting when they say they want to opt their kids out, because frankly, they wouldn't be spending much time in school, period, if that's what they were wanting to do.
That's true.
So that's how pervasive it is. Okay, so they are confusing these kids. Not only are they confusing them, but within the context of the materials that they're presenting, they are characterizing anybody that disagrees with this as somebody who's a bigot and as a hater. And once they've confused these kids, and in my opinion, put them on a path that could lead them to becoming transgender, I'll get into more of that in a second here, then the privacy guidelines kick in. Okay, so again, from the Gender Spectrum book, what educators need to know. So here, they're telling teachers that if a child starts exhibiting transgender behaviors and stuff, starts dressing as the opposite gender and stuff like that, that they are not to tell parents about this. That this information needs to be kept private from parents. Now, a lot of these transgender kids, again, if we go back to that support group with Alex Drummond where the camera went in, a lot of the transgender people and the transgender youths are identifying these days. When I look at them, I see myself when I was young. I was sort of nerdy, kind of a social outcast. I didn't feel like I fit in. And these are going to be the ones who are most likely to fall for this. In my opinion, this is just another form of identity crisis. The Goths. Does anybody here remember the Goths? They're real big back in the 90s and stuff. How many Goths are still goth today?
No.
Almost none, right? But that was another form of, a reflection of an identity crisis where they were trying to, carve a new place or image for themselves in society. So it's an identity crisis, and I believe the transgender thing is just another form of that in most cases. The difference is that they're being led onto a path that involves these puberty blockers and synthetic hormones and possibly genital mutilating surgery later on. So it's an identity crisis with a difference in the sense that it can destroy their bodies and become permanent. So some people will criticize me and say, well, it's not permanent. Well, let's take a look at the University of California, San Francisco's gender clinic. And they say in there, basically, that soon after beginning hormone treatment, you will notice, I'll skip that part, that's not a good one. So your testicles will shrink to half their normal size, if you're a boy. Within months of beginning hormone therapy, you must assume that you will become permanently and irreversibly sterile.
Oh my God.
And that is why when we look at these kids with identity crises and stuff and other issues, I regard this as a form of eugenics.
Yeah.
Again, at least half of these kids have psychological disorders, okay? In addition to what they call gender dysphoria. And they're the most vulnerable to these ideas that they're putting into their heads and stuff. So kids with autism and other personality disorders are going to be most prone to fixating on this stuff. And again, we're back to the fact that they've now set up a privacy wall. They don't want teachers telling parents. Gender dysphoria can be a very serious condition. And again, I mentioned it's cited as an epiphenomenon of other serious psychiatric illnesses. To prevent parents from getting this information is, in my mind, criminal. Actually, the BC School Act has a section in Division 2 where parents are supposed to be informed of behavior, attendance, progress, all of these types of things. So it's a violation of the BC School Act. So again, they are painting anybody that disagrees with this as bigots and haters. Many of those bigots and haters might be in this room today. Christians who might think that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And you can't choose to be the other or someplace in between. Now, the ARC Foundation was consulted in this. Numerous international LGBTQ organizations were consulted in this. These people comprise about 2% of the population, and they basically had the lion's share of the say in developing SOGI. Who wasn't consulted in this? The largest single demographic in British Columbia, Christians. Okay? This is old information which showed the Christians comprised about, like people who identify as Christian comprised about 60% of the population in BC. In Canada, more recent statistics show that, well, this is, they got Protestant Catholic, so we're still pretty high there. So it's still, any way you spell it, even though the Christian identity is shrinking, it's still the largest single demographic in British Columbia. And the people who created SOGI completely and deliberately ignored them.
Yeah. And Muslims and Sikhs.
And this brings me to my next point, is the issue of Christians. One of the themes that I've noticed, and again, I've been in this for over a year, and I have debated transgender activists and LGBTQ activists ad nauseum over the last year. I've talked to and debated some of the people who are heavily promoting these things, like Morgane Auger, and some of the people who design the actual materials and stuff. And something that I noticed in my conversations with them was that there was a all too common underlying visceral hatred of Christians and traditional values. So Jacob's new dress is what I think is kind of an interesting example of that. Jacob, who dresses up like a girl, is portrayed as this wonderful free spirit, and here he is running through the field with his dress flying behind him like wings. And he's the wonderful hero of the book. The bad guy in this book is somebody here, the mean, sort of kind of ugly, scowling figure. That guy's name is Christopher. Christopher. You might think that's a coincidence. I don't. The ARC Foundation, again, they're not exactly a bastion of traditional values and Christian values, right? The driving force behind this. The man who was the primary designer of the sex education program in Ontario, that's part of their equivalent of SOGI, a guy by the name of Benjamin Levin, was recently sent to jail on 6 counts of child pornography. Christopher Wells, who has been named Mr. Gay Calgary, is another person who's very heavily involved in what they call anti-bullying programs. So SOGI is promoted as an anti-bullying program. It's not really an anti-bullying program. But he is involved in the creation and promotion of a lot of these things, not just in Alberta, where he's from, but all across Canada, because that's the goal of SOGI, is to spread all the way across Canada. Well, Christopher Wells posted on his Twitter the following photo. Okay, so that's a Christian there with a knife. That's a rainbow flag LGBT person. The shadow of the Christian is a Nazi. and the shadow here is a Jew. So they are portraying Christians as Nazis. Laura Lynn mentioned this earlier. Again, Morgaine Auger, who's one of the main proponents of the SOGI program in BC. He's called the Christian religion a death cult.
Yep.
People with these attitudes towards the largest demographic in British Columbia should not be designing educational programs for the children of BC.
That's right.
So again, focusing on the kids, I don't think that they should be going to these kids. So they're going to a lot of kids who have autism and other psychological issues, and a kid who might otherwise not have these gender confusing ideas in their heads. They're putting those ideas in their heads and potentially confusing them and leading them down this path. They shouldn't be putting those ideas there. Just leave the kids alone.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Again, this is my first time with my new presentation. Bear with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so what I want you to try to do is try to imagine what's going to happen if they take these kids from kindergarten all the way through grade 12 and they blast them with this gender confusing stuff. They glorify transgender identity, and they present like I Am Jazz to make it look super cool and celebrity cool, right? So they blast them with all this stuff and all these other LGBT things that they're blasting them with, and they do it all the way through school. What do you think that's going to do to the family unit in a Christian home where the parents don't agree with any of this stuff?
Parents are the biggest.
It's going to put a wedge between the parents and their children. And that's why I regard this as one of the largest or one of the biggest threats to traditional values and Christian values that I've seen in my lifetime. And what about the future of the Christian religion? Okay, so you get these kids, you indoctrinate them for 13 years, put wedges between them and their parents. What do you think the odds are that they're going to be inclined to become Christians? Is it increased or decreased? I am not a practicing Christian, but one thing that I share in common with Christians, and one of the reasons that I'm here today, is I have a powerful faith in God. Okay, I don't even like to say faith or belief. I know there's a God. And this, I think, binds me to the Christian community. But I was also raised in Christian homes. One of the stipulations when I was a child, when I got put into foster care, again through sort of a bunch of weird fluke things, my grandmother insisted that I always only be put in Christian homes. So I'm very familiar with the Christian community and Christian people, and I know that they're just good, honest, decent, moral people for the most part. So even though I'm not a practicing Christian right now, I believe, and I really believe this, that I have come back to the Christian community today to sound an alarm.
Yeah.
Traditional values and family values are under assault. Now, some Christians think that I'm too mean when I tell and insist on calling Morgaine a man. But it is really critically important, again, to speak the truth. We have men being put into women's prisons right now. We have men being admitted to women's rape shelters. Again, we've got men in women's sports. It is critically important to speak the truth right now.
That's right.
And I will not back down on that. But I've actually had to, I don't like to, but I had to block some Christians who kept giving me heck over and over and over again, saying I was too mean. All I was doing was speaking the truth, but they kept saying, no, you're being too mean, stop being so mean. Let me just say that they're busy brainwashing our kids, okay? So we need to get serious about that. I mean, as a society, we have drifted so far from the truth